Castlevania 1 was so fucking cool. It was fresh and exciting, and it felt great. Whipping dudes, yeah, I'll get out of here! The best part, though, was that it clearly had a lot of thought put into it. For better or for worse. See, the thing you gotta realize about games in the NES days is that last stability was even then a big issue. Games were anywhere from 30 to 60 bucks, and that shit's steep. You couldn't pay for that shit with your fucking lunch money. The NES cartridge didn't have a lot of space, so developers had to mind their limits, but also try to make a game that lasts a long time, so people felt like they got their fortunes worth. The easy out at the time was making a game that was frustratingly hard. Whoa, shit! Most of the time it was in cheap ways. Castlevania took it a step further in the right direction. Somehow, at the beginning of the video game era, these guys knew what game design really was. They employed a lot of misdirection in order to create a difficulty level that was out of this world. The idea was that most kids just kind of plow through a game. If you did that in Castlevania, though, you got your balls rocked. Oh god! They planned everything around the path you would take if you just ran right through. Castlevania's level and enemy placement required you to stop and think for a second. To be careful and mind your surroundings. It made you take in the level design and quickly find an effective way to beat it. Or you could just die. And, despite being this great vampire hunter, your whip had like this delay on it. This was intentional. Jumping didn't have a delay, but your whip took a second to fire up. This added this huge level of depth to strategizing your attack, and it made plowing through enemies that much more of a non-option. In a way, it was kind of like a metaphor for being in an actual scary situation. You wouldn't just rush in like nothing mattered, throwing your fucking life away. You would stop nervously and assess the situation before slowly and carefully approaching danger. It was fucking great! And it felt smart and complex, and it was an instant classic. Yeah! And then they made a second one. So I know the Angry Video Game Nerd made a video about Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, and I love him and that video, but I don't give a fuck! So here's what they did right in Castlevania 2. Number 1! Game feel! So, Castlevania 1 and 2 employed the same basic elements. Attack with your whip, and kill enemies, yada yada, bing bong boom! But Castlevania 2 had better game feel in general. It just felt better. The whip sound effect was way cooler, and the death sounds were better. There were more enemies that took more than one hit, and they made wailing on enemies feel so much better. They added more of a freeze to when you hit the enemy that took multiple hits. Also, the little explodey flame was nicer, and it was a much better indicator of death, because it was brighter, and it just looked like it popped out. It was clear you killed an enemy, or at least that you were hitting an enemy, and that felt good. It felt good. It felt good! It felt really good when I beat this shit number 2! Day and night!
Are you being serious?
Yes, I'm serious.
Come on, you're kidding.
I'm serious! Look, okay, I know you've all seen the AVGN review, and he complained so much about that shit. Yeah, okay, maybe the little prompt was kind of tedious when it showed up and it lasted for 7 centuries as you're waiting to play. Okay, duh, that's a given, and they should have fixed that. But the concept of this element was new, and it was exciting. You never knew when the world was gonna turn on you, and it reminded you of this kind of sense of looming evil. Silent Hill did the same goddamn thing! Y'all love it so much! Castlevania's theme was horror and fear. This was difficult in the NES days, because, I mean, look at this! What is this even? So they had to, like most other developers at the time, resort to using the game to set its tone. Can you believe it? How do you make a game that looks like this? Or this! Scary. For Simon's Quest, it involved making the player feel helpless somehow, afraid of something bigger that he can't explain or control standing in his way. This shit was scary, or at least unnerving. And it was especially scary when you were low on health in the middle of a long stretch and you're like, please don't let there be a curse, please don't let there be a curse, please don't let there be a... I mean, that prompt alone just scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it even. I was just like, what is happening?! Castlevania 1 didn't have that shit, it just had goofy skeletons throwing bones. When are you gonna run out and fall apart? But okay, I just like to give credit where credit is due, alright? Simon's Quest is dumb, and it's stupid, and it's stupid, and it's dumb. Okay, here's what they did wrong. Number 3! Towns! And the RPG! The towns were dumb and boring and had nothing to do with hitting things with your whip. Okay, so this game added RPG elements where you had to buy upgrades from a store. Hearts that you collected from enemies instead of being your ammo for your alt weapon, which was the bomb, by the way. Instead are money to buy upgrades and other necessary objects for completing the game. So instantly this becomes farming, and instantly this becomes pointless and dumb. These kinds of things were meant to elongate a game. They're made to manipulate you into thinking you're achieving something more than you're actually achieving. What? Huh? What? What? An element in a game wasn't made solely for me to have fun? Oh no. That's no. Let me ask you something. What is the difference between A, killing a bunch of zombies to get hearts out of them, collecting the hearts, and then going back to town to get an item to go to another part of the game, and B, Playing a game where you kill zombies that are obstructing your forward path to another part of the game. Answer 4 hours! See, this is the difference between Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 2, and this is pretty wholly the difference. It becomes the source of all the game's shortcomings. Simon's Quest is very manipulative. There's a lot of fucking running around. Castlevania doesn't waste your fucking time, and it gives you a goal to look forward to. A really tough boss battle that's exciting and interesting, and a ridiculous difficulty. Holy fuck, it's hard! Fuck this shit, it's hard! Fuck, oh, look at this boss fight everywhere! What do I do? Number 4! Health and continues! Castlevania was just straight up hard, but Simon's Quest dumbed down the difficulty substantially. And part of that was another thing that changed. No chicken, just churches. See, these are the kind of analogies I love about video games. Castlevania 1 is to chicken, as Castlevania 2 is to churches. What the fuck are you talking about? Mysterious hidden roasted dungeon wall chicken in Castlevania 1 healed you, but in Castlevania 2, churches and towns heal you. So in Castlevania 1, if you needed health, you were fucked! Unless you got lucky, or you knew exactly where all the chicken was hidden, and you were at a spot where there was, you know, indeed, chicken in the walls. In Castlevania 2, if you were man enough to make a pilgrimage to your local town, you could hit up the church and get all your health back. But if you died, you just kind of respawn where you died. Okay. Well, whatever. But hey, if you fucking lose all your life, you have to continue, which still spawns you exactly where you died, but you lose all your hearts. So if you're headed to buy some super important item that you need to advance, and you have to continue, then you gotta fucking grind more hearts out of enemies and waste more of your fucking time. And wandering back to a town that's a bazillion miles away to get your health back wastes your fucking time. I hope you see where I'm coming from so I don't have to keep wasting my fucking time explaining it. Either of these things could have been toned down by making health drops or just even keeping the fucking wall chicken around. I don't know. The point is they're wasting your time for no fucking reason. Number 5! The palette! Okay, I don't know about you, but the first thing that struck me about Simon's Quest when I first started it up was how boring Simon looked. Makes me wanna fall asleep. Whoa, look at that orange! In Castlevania 1, he popped out. Bzam! But all of the level palettes incorporated orange in some way, and often incorporated shades of blue, which is orange's complement. AKA, it makes orange pop out. It made everything really pop in general, and the game felt alive. In Simon's Quest, Simon got this dull black outline with red dark tunic. Snore! Stages often incorporated very dull, washed-over color combinations and rarely added any splashes of color and small details like Castlevania 1 did. To its credit, Simon's Quest incorporated a lot of green, red's complement, but it was all muddy and mostly stayed in kind of this safe dark palette and never deviated too far into the brighter shades, like Castlevania dared to do. Overall, it felt boring and it had no soul or character. All the levels kind of just bled together into one big dark gray mess, which kind of reflects the entire game really. Whoops, did I just say that out loud? Towns were without a doubt the worst culprit of bad palette choices. An entire town was all one flat, uninteresting color. Go indoors. It's all blue. Go outside. It's all red. Night comes and it's all dark blue. I mean, seriously. I know the NES has a limited palette, but come on. Give me some contrasting colors. Give me some complement. Give me something interesting to explore and look at. Number 6! Stupid enemy shit! So, as I mentioned before, Castlevania 1 has genius enemy placement, and it was wicked memorable, and it gave you the sense that the game was thought out, and it was just so hard. Like, yeah, okay, it was all possible, but it wasn't like the controls were bad. You just had to strategize your jumps and attack at the right time, but holy fuck, it was so goddamn hard. It was so hard, dude! It was frustrating, and it would put you in a shitty mood because you keep fucking dying, and dying, and dying. When you beat it, though, it was super triumphant, but it made you, like, even more stressed out for what was to come. God damn it! Anyway, sorry. So basically, Castlevania 1 is the perfect example of the advantage of linear gameplay. You can plan around one scenario. The player is coming in from one direction in any situation, and you can plan enemy and level placement accordingly. You can really give the player a tight, consistent experience that they'll remember forever. But look, in Simon's Quest, like, the enemies were in places that were just asking to die. Like, check out this part where I'm just naturally jumping and swinging and I'm landing hits on every enemy without a second thought. Look at that! Castlevania did like the opposite of this, especially with shit like the Medusa head. The problem here is that Simon's Quest is way too open-ended. Stuff is all scattered everywhere, and it's easy to miss things, so you're gonna be doing a lot of back and forth through the same areas you've been through over and over and fucking over. I'm sick of these fucking blobs! Ah! Oh, they're back! So with that in mind, the developers realized they can't have these complicated, ridiculous enemy layouts in the game because nobody's gonna backtrack through this. And even in the mansions, they expect you to backtrack out of them. The one place you would think the enemies would be planned out really well. It's just like they didn't really want to put any effort into it to begin with. So, with all this cookie-cutter enemy placement, why did they even keep the sloppy whip controls? It still has a ridiculous delay, and it still freezes you in place when you're standing still. If the point of the enemy placement now is to be able to dispatch them all pretty quickly when you're backtracking, why is it still slow as fuck? You really start to feel the effects of the clunky movement when the game isn't planned around it anymore. And that's really the ultimate key to all this. Castlevania feels well thought out. It feels planned and complete. But Castlevania 2 just feels like a fucking mess. Number 7! The bosses! Okay, this is kind of a personal point, but it was a little underwhelming to not encounter bosses in all the mansions. When they finally did show up, like 50 hours into the game, you were pretty decked out with awesome shit, and you could just fucking destroy them in a second. Castlevania 1 had neat bosses at the end of every stage, and it was wicked. It had like this build-up and this payoff when it restored all your health and you advanced to the next crazy stage that was all different and had different music and everything. You felt like you were accomplishing something. You felt like you were going somewhere. Number 8! Where do I fucking go?! This is probably the most common complaint, and it is a huge glaring issue. Simon's Quest is so convoluted, it's a wonder I could even finish it with a fucking walkthrough. So you can talk to townsfolk and they'll tell you shit. First of all, there's way too much shit. Way too much shit. So right away the villagers start telling you like 70 things at once, and how the fuck are you supposed to remember every little detail? So get out a pen and paper and start fucking writing that shit. When do I stop? But nothing they say is helpful. It's all cryptic, and some of them lie to you. Once you actually know what to do by reading it in fucking English on GameFAQs or something, you'll run into the villager who said for you to do that specific thing, and you still can't even interpret it as what you were supposed to do. Kneel next to the wall on the far left or whatever is... hit your head on the top of the... What the fuck?
How to fix it.
Okay, see now, what I think is kind of nice is this dude named the Almighty Guru did a ROM hack of Simon's Quest called Simon's Quest Redacted. And they did a couple things way right. Number 1, the text crawling is wicked fast. Number 2, all the dialogue is rewritten in fucking English, so people say things that actually clue you in on what to do. Number 3, the night and day transition is lightning fast. It was a really nice gesture, and it truly shows how creative some gamers can be. But when it comes down to it, the minor tweaks can't fix an ultimately broken game. See, everybody nags about all the little things that annoy them about this game, but if the game itself is bad, fixing those things won't really do much in the long run. Knowing where to get the items is great, whatever, but getting there is boring. Jumps are frustrating, enemies are lifeless and forgettable. Running around back and forth is tiring, grinding for hearts is a fucking chore, it's a fucking mess! The point is, Konami tried something different with Castlevania 2 in order to make it last longer than Castlevania 1. That's the bottom line. They probably heard that people thought Castlevania 1 was too difficult, so they toned it down to give the player avatar strength, leveling up the player's avatar while still maintaining the basic level of difficulty throughout. It wasn't hard in the traditional sense, it was only imaginary hard, because enemies took more hits if you didn't have the best whip, and dispatching more resilient enemies wasn't really a challenge, it just took longer. What was truly hard was avoiding Medusas and axes and still being in the range of the night guy to lay some hits on him, and fuck! See, he took a lot of hits, but you weren't just standing there wailing on him, you were surviving this onslaught of constant shit, and every extra hit he took had serious implications and consequences for you as a player. Yes! Oh man, another one! The epilogue! Castlevania 2's cheap lastability is easily identifiable because it falls flat in so many areas, aka it sucks! But the more recent Castlevanias have been using the exact same tactics that I've been complaining about. There's a lot of running around, you level up your strength, you have to get items in order to advance forwards, but these games get unreal praise. Why is that? It would be because they use design choices that complement all of this shitty boringness. Leveling up feels good because all those sparkly sounds and colors. It feels good to hit enemies. The hit sparks and sound effects are all really exciting. Moving around is fast, and jumping on stuff is fun. You get a lot of power-ups that change how the game is played a little bit at a time. You get a lot of small rewards frequently. It's just very fast-paced. It feels very conducive to mindlessly running around, because you aren't constantly hindered by this choppy platforming and slow gripping. But are you getting anything out of it any more than you are when playing Simon's Quest with like a walkthrough? Do you feel like you're legitimately beating a hard boss or enemy by grinding for a while and getting the best sword and then wailing on him until he falls? Are you getting any sense of genuine satisfaction from having to run back and forth through places you've already been in order to get something that allows you to advance forward more easily? Or do you still feel the most satisfied when you use your wicked cunning to get around these super perilous obstacles? I mean, it's kind of like comparing a snack food to high-class dessert. You can just chomp away mindlessly at snacks because that's how they're made. They're addictive by nature. They just make you reach for more even if you don't really want more. But a high-class dessert takes some slowing down. It demands that you take a moment to really enjoy how complex and satisfying it is. In the end, you'll always think more highly of the high-class dessert because it gave you a feeling of true satisfaction. It's not designed to go on forever, it was designed to finish off a meal. Maybe it was so good you wanted more. But what you had was delicious, and you're glad you had it. Or you could just be a fucking pig and eat it all.